Okay, here we go. So let's talk about a couple foods and options we can do in the kitchen and things that we can use to our benefit. There's a number of complex carbohydrate sources. This is a yam or sweet potato, whatever you want to call it. I don't know the difference, but in the end, these are, let's say, high in nutrient density. And I would say actually kind of for the calories, you don't get a lot. It's not as low calorically dense, but these are gonna fill you up. This is great for getting full. And I have a number of dishes I use with these. Zucchini pastas, there's a number of vegetable pastas out there. Like I said, it's vegetable based, but it looks like, you know, some of the carbohydrates we're used to. So one thing that's really neat about these, so you're talking 12 grams of protein per serving, and we wanna look at this size. This is if you made, say, 3.5 servings. I like to look, there's 4 servings in a container, and we have per serving right here, so we know there's 800 calories in this, and more, let's say, micronutrients. This is a great option if you wanted more protein in your pasta kind of taste. This is just a bean, pinto bean. Calorie-wise, you know, we can see the servings there. It's a complex carbohydrate, and something that I like about it, that we have some fiber in there, 5 grams per, 22 carbs, 7 grams of protein. You can see there's no salt or anything. It's just plain beans, and these are super cheap. We'll learn about some of the trade-offs, as this takes a long time to cook. In order to make beans, there's probably a number of recipes you can see out there that are gonna use a lot of fats and various things that are gonna bring the calories up. If I didn't have time to say cook a bean, I could actually use canned beans. These are 100% fine. So you're gonna find in the backs, you know, the calories are gonna be fairly close. The ones that don't use fats or whatnot. So pretty much, you know, you can see there's salt and things like that in there, but if you're in a hurry or you just wanna make a quick meal, these are perfectly fine, they're convenient. Obviously, got the big boy air fryer here from my kitchen because we use this all the time. It's amazing for reheating food, making some of these sweet potato, you can make sweet potato fries and that out of this stuff. Some really cool things you could do with it, but that's not the star of the show today. It's gonna be this guy, it's our Crockpot. This is a really beneficial tool, you may have one. It's great for like low and slow cooking or quick cooking, but this is gonna be a dish, or let's say a side or whatever you wanna call it, that is gonna take a long time because we're gonna hit it low and slow. So the slower you cook it, the more flavor it's gonna have. So what's gonna be really important in our beans is that we season them. There's a number of ways to make these. We're gonna leave the fats out. So we're just gonna use spices and things to our advantage. So this is a beef bouillon cube, and so we're gonna use this for our salt. We have some chili powder for a little bit of spice. We're gonna chop up some jalapenos and throw these in the crock pot. We got this is liquid smoke. There is no calories in this, but it's gonna give it that kind of smoky taste that I'm looking for. Cumin's a great spice if you want that kind of meatier taste. We're gonna put that in there, obviously some garlic. So we're gonna make these taste good. We don't need fats to make them taste good. And I'm gonna throw this is an old onion just sitting in the fridge, you know, it wasn't bagged and there's no mold on it, I don't think. So I'm gonna throw this in there instead of using onion powder, just to kind of give it some onion taste. Now, over here, what I bought is, you'll see, I got a protein on sale. This is a top beef round steak. Now, if you tried to grill this or season it, yes, it's a steak and it's a red meat, but really it's gonna be tough. So one thing that's an advantage to our crock pot here is if we do low and slow, we're gonna get this to kind of break down. It's gonna absorb all these spices and kind of break down and make this taste better. So in my beans, rather than using a fatty pork, I'm gonna use something with a little bit more protein and less fat. And you can tell there's less fat because there's not the little white lines there, you know, the little pieces, where if you're picking your meats, you'll notice the fattier meats are gonna have a little more of this, you know, coloring of fat. So pretty much all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna throw some of this stuff, measure it out, throw it in the crock pot, hit low for 8 hours, see how it looks, get the texture of the beans, see if it's done, and that's it. Super easy. It's a high protein, that's a side you could have, or an actual dish. It just depends on whatever you wanna use it for. But this is just kind of some of the ways I make meals in my world. Little over a pound of this brown. I'm just gonna throw the meat in there. Throw, I know, 1,200 calories of bean. And then I'm gonna put some water in there. Really, more water is not bad. It's just, you have to have enough or it's gonna dry out. You can always drain it. If you actually use the perfect amount, it can be creamier, or you can just cook it a little bit longer if you wanted to. A couple of these bouillon cubes, just to give it some salt, because that's the main thing I notice in these plain beans. There's no salt, so you want to make it flavorful. Otherwise, you're not going to want to eat it. It's going to be too plain. But you could add it at the end if you wanted to. But generally, when you're cooking, low and slow is the way if you want flavor. If you're like me most of the time and you just want, you know, just quick, you can just do whatever you want. I'm going to put this in. This is some liquid smoke, just to give it some smokiness, something I'm craving, and more of like a kind of beefy taste. Just gonna throw some chili powder in there. That's a lot, but Probably wouldn't use that much. I like spicy. Got a little bit of cumin powder for the flavor there. And speaking of kitchen tools, this is kind of an interesting one. Like, just take your jalapenos, grind them down, and there you go. You're all chopped up, right? Take those, bump that in there. I like spicy here. We get our jalapenos. Just kind of toss that in there for extra flavor, and then pretty much just. All right, so we're gonna fire that on a little bit. We're gonna go up to 8 hours and start, and that's it. Once it's all done, you're just going to slap everything into containers, and I didn't use meal trays on this one. I just had something else, so it really doesn't matter. But ultimately, the only reason I have a food scale is so I make sure the 3 portions I have, there's a total of 5 in this one. I just want to make sure they're relatively the same. Most importantly, just because when I'm eating a meal, I don't want to, have a little bit less than one. And now it's time to log the calories and just figure out what we did here. So pretty much we're going to add the ingredients, and you can do this beforehand. I just happen to do it afterwards. So I'm making 5 portions, and I'm going to make sure to scan everything that I used and weighed out with, for the most part, because there's things we talked about I didn't use, in seasonings or vegetables and that stuff. So really, when you're scanning though, you need to pay attention, because sometimes the data that comes up isn't correct. So you need to compare those numbers, say calories, and if you're tracking macros, then make sure to compare those two to the package, and you can go through a list. There's a lot of stuff that's wrong, and that's kind of disappointing too, because in my Fitness Pal, it was decent for a while, and then after paying for it now, I noticed that it's not the same, and sometimes things don't pull up. So you can just go in there and look for it. You can go through different items. There's even a way to manually enter this in if you wanted to, but for me, I just try and find something that's relatively close that I know is going to be fine, and the calories are pretty close, because in a deficit, you need to make sure the calories are there. Macros are more, in my opinion, for performance. So as you're kind of adding everything up, just make sure you're using the correct totals. It's something you'll get used to if you're not a numbers person. That's what's nice about these, say, apps, is they help you through that. You don't have to do so much calculation. But the only 2 ingredients I pretty much put in that I call primary ingredients are the beans and the meat. So I found both of those, entered my portion, and I save it up, and there we go. We have 370 calories per serving. We got 36 grams of protein, and so I could eat this just as a meal if I wanted, or I can have extras with it. So I have a little bit of room there depending on the calories I need. But yeah, it's that simple. Crockpot is money.